Hi everyone, it's Charlie. Hopefully you've had a chance to see Avengers Endgame by now. It's been out for a couple days. There's so many questions everyone has. So this will be my video breaking down the end of the film. There's so many things that they set up, so many questions that you guys had from my review videos that I posted this week. There's so much stuff about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we'll have to talk about in the next week. So there'll be a bunch of videos coming. Be sure to subscribe to get everything if you're new to my channel. I'm also bringing back the Infinity Gauntlet giveaway too. All you have to do to enter that is be a subscriber and leave a comment about the movie on the video. Really big spoiler warning for Avengers Endgame if you have not seen it yet. We'll be talking about the end of the movie, very specific stuff, so careful for spoilers. What I'm going to do is because the end of the film is really like the entire last hour of the film, I'm just going to brush through the unimportant stuff and hit the really big beats. So the three different Avengers teams are successful in their attempt to steal the Infinity Stones from different places earlier in their timeline. Remember, they're using Dragon Ball Z time travel rules, so anything that they change in the past won't affect their future. It'll only create alternate timelines, alternate realities for those points in time. So the Ancient One sort of gives Hulk that explainer tutorial on how time travel works and how she's going to be doomed in their reality if they don't bring the time stone back. We'll circle back around to that in a second because that gets into the Captain America scene towards the end of the film. But Iron Man makes a Stark Tech gauntlet to hold the Infinity Stones. Hulk is the one to snap everyone back because correctly, by his logic, the original Infinity Gauntlet almost killed Thanos when he used it, and he's naturally one of the most powerful people in the universe, so it's almost fatal to anyone who's not a higher being that tries to wield it. He also jokes that the Infinity Gauntlet gives off a lot of gamma radiation, so it's almost as if I was made for this, wink wink from behind the camera, because gamma radiation, the Hulk. Professor Hulk snaps everyone back to the current year, which is 2023, 5 years after the original snap. Everyone who comes back has not aged a day, and for them, it feels like they've only been gone for a few moments. Remember that because it's important for Spider-Man related questions in Spider-Man Far From Home. We know the snap works because Hawkeye's wife, who had been snapped, suddenly calls him on his phone and he's really happy. But secretly, while this is all happening, evil Nebula from 2014 had swapped places with our Nebula and then secretly brought Thanos into present day using the time travel platform and our Nebula's Pym particles. That's how he shrunk his ship down and brought it through the portal. So as they're cheering themselves, yay, our snap worked, Thanos' ship goes back to regular size, starts bombarding the Avengers base, and that's basically when the beginning of the end of the movie starts, and it's that entire last battle for the last hour of the film. There's an ongoing game of hot potato keep away with the Stark Tech Infinity Gauntlet that starts with Hawkeye, but then winds up being Spider-Man after they all come back. Doctor Strange and Wong, who had remember been brought back by the snap, portal in pretty much every Marvel character you've ever seen in any MCU film to fight with the Avengers against Thanos' army, evening the odds. You have the thick with two C's, Thor, dual-wielding Mjolnir that he had stolen from the events of Thor the Dark World and Stormbreaker in present day. And now because we have a Mjolnir in present day, it allows Captain America to wield it, paying off that moment from Avengers Age of Ultron. It's a big comic book moment. Both times when I watched it, everyone in my theater cheered so loud. Not as loud as Thor cheered though. He says, "I knew it. Find someone who looks at you the way that Thor looks at Captain America wielding Mjolnir." There's a lot of questions about what's going on with Gamora and Nebula in present day now because of all the time travel. So because Thanos from 2014 comes into present day with a younger Nebula and a younger Gamora before the events of Guardians of the Galaxy, Gamora never joined their team, so she never fell in love with Star-Lord, but she still has that sisterly bond with Nebula, so she is kind of a good character. She helps turn her. They try to stop Thanos as much as they can during the fight. But after the fight, because she has no allegiance to the Guardians of the Galaxy, young Gamora from 2014 just takes off, and that sort of sets them off on the plot for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, or as Guardians of the Galaxy, which I'll talk about in a second. But during the battle, after Captain Marvel briefly bites Thanos, he finally gets his hands on the Stark Tech Gauntlet, but before he can snap, Iron Man yoinks all the Infinity Stones to his gauntlet and snaps Thanos and all of his forces from 2014 away with his iconic line, "I am Iron Man." But because the power of the Infinity Gauntlet is too much for his normal human body to handle, it effectively kills him. But he lives long enough to get goodbyes with a couple of the big characters like Spider-Man, "I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark," Pepper Potts, and Rhodey. So she basically tells him, "You can rest, the job is done, we'll be okay." They have a funeral scene for him with all the Avengers characters and the other main characters attending, even Ty Simpkins' character from Iron Man 3. Remember, he was the little kid from Iron Man 3. Everybody was asking, who's that teenager standing next to Captain Marvel? That was who that was. Not only has it been a long time since the events of that movie, it's also 5 years later. It's 2023, so Cassie Lang is still a teenager at the end of the film. There's a scene of them playing a message that Iron Man left from before the time travel plan started as a sort of final message to them just in case things didn't work, what his hopes were, as they go to a bunch of different scenes around the world of everyone going back to their people. Like you see Black Panther and Wakanda. It was sort of like the end of the special edition Star Wars where they go around to the different cities and you see the celebrations after the second Death Star is blown up. One of the scenes is Spider-Man going back to school at Midtown High the next day, presumably, and reuniting with Ned Leeds, looking like they both kind of been traumatized, like, I'm so happy to see my friend again after being snapped. The biggest question that I've seen the last couple of days on all my videos and my feeds is how are they going to address this during Spider-Man Far From Home? All the kids are the same age, they're on this class trip to Europe, how are they not talking about this trauma that they experienced? And last year, Amy Pascal said that Spider-Man Far From Home picks up minutes after the end of Avengers Endgame, so I think that's what she's talking about here, where you see him walk into school at the end of the film. I think the only way this works is if all the kids in Peter's group here that are on this class trip during Spider-Man Far From Home got snapped, so they didn't move forward in school. Maybe there were a couple kids they went to school with who did not get snapped, who are now 5 years older, but that's just a really easy way to explain how all these kids are the same age and Spider-Man Far From Home can still take place after the events of Avengers Endgame. There's a scene with Happy in the trailer where he says you're all alone now, even though they haven't come right out and said that Iron Man is dead during one of those trailers. Hopefully there'll be a new trailer that will give us some more details about that. But think about all the character development that Spider-Man got between Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. It would be a huge middle finger if they released a movie a couple months later just completely ignoring that. So I think they do have a way of addressing it at the very beginning of Spider-Man Far From Home. One of the other final scenes of the film is Thor joining the Guardians of the Galaxy, passing leadership of Asgard to Valkyrie, saying it's time for me to be who I am rather than who I'm supposed to be. Valkyrie is thus named Queen of Asgard. Thor officially joins the Guardians. They joke about it being Asgardians of the Galaxy together again, like Thor was just waiting to rejoin them this whole time. They have a funny standoff about who's going to be their new leader, because technically Thor was king of Asgard and he's the most powerful member of the team at this point, so Star-Lord is a little intimidated. They're just carrying forward the comedy of the scenes that they had during Infinity War when they first picked him up and Star-Lord was super intimidated by him. But the whole idea is that Star-Lord wants to find that younger Gamora from 2014 and win her over to their team. So that sounds like it's going to be the plot of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 or Asgardians of the Galaxy, whatever they decide to call it. So the cool thing about that is that you have Thor in that movie. He'll probably lose all that weight before the movie starts, but you have someone who's powerful enough to counter Adam Warlock, who's getting ready to hatch out of his cocoon during that film. We'll talk more about future Marvel movies when I do Marvel Phase 4 videos in the next week. We're still kind of working our way through the end of the movie at this point. Like I said, Lord of the Rings style, there are several different endings to the film because everyone has to get their goodbyes. The deal with the version of Loki from 2012 that escapes with the Tesseract is that, remember, the changes they make in the past splinter new timelines, so that's now an alternate reality version of Loki that would exist in present day potentially. So if we see another version of Loki pop up in present day who's alive, it's going to be from an alternate timeline. It won't be our version of Loki from Infinity War, who's still dead at the end of Avengers Endgame. So when Tom Hiddleston's Disney Plus streaming service show starts in the next couple of years, I don't expect it to be that version of Loki. I think it's going to be a Loki set during the past, because we'll see him throughout his life popping up on Earth just causing mischief. Sort of like a Quantum Leap Loki show of him popping up across human history throughout the ages, just influencing really big events in world history. Then you have the Captain America scene where he takes the Infinity Stones back to where they stole them from to keep all those timelines intact. But instead of coming right back, he stays in the past with Peggy Carter and they have that quote-unquote last dance that she said she'd save for him when he went into the ice. He then shows up on a park bench near the lake, just like he was waiting for them, Back to the Future 2 style. If you remember the end of Back to the Future 2, the Doc stayed in the past in the Wild West and then arranged for a message to be sent to Marty when it got to his time in present day. The Captain America twist breaks a couple of their time travel rules that they had set up, but essentially he had just stayed in the past and grew old with her. He refuses to tell them about the wedding ring on his finger, but we all know that he got married to a version of Peggy Carter. They grew up together. He had a family with her. He had the really nice life that Iron Man told him to get. He then passes a repaired version of the Captain America shield to Falcon, saying, "Try it on," and passing the mantle to him. So presumably we'll see him wearing his Falcon Captain America costume in whatever next Avengers movie they do. So Captain America is not dead at the end of the film, but any future contribution from him in present day would be at Stan Lee cameo level, like, shake his fist or like have some inspirational quote that he gives to younger Avengers. As for the logic of the twist, like how could he exist in that past timeline without splintering out a whole bunch of others, the easiest way to explain it based on the rules that they set up earlier in the film is that once he makes the decision to stay in the past and they're dancing together, that creates an alternate timeline. He stayed in that timeline as he grew older with Peggy Carter. He kept the time travel suit and got his hands on some more Pym particles from Hank Pym in that timeline. Then once his version of Peggy Carter died of natural causes, he chose to use his time travel suit and the Pym particles to come back and wait for them on this park bench in the original timeline that he came from. So don't drive yourself crazy trying to explain how it is that Captain America can exist in his own timeline, because remember, nothing they do in the past will change their future. So he could do anything he wanted to in the past, it would just create alternate timelines. He lived during one of those, then eventually Old Man Cap hopped back to the original timeline that he came from. So that's how he winds up on this park bench here. Our version of Black Widow, unfortunately, is still dead at the end of the film. They explain that they can't undo the Soul Stone sacrifice. Professor Hulk even explains that when he snapped everyone back, he tried to bring her back, but it didn't work. But he's still Professor Hulk with a very messed up arm like Thanos was at the end of Infinity War, so he's still fine to come back in future movies as Professor Hulk. The very final scene of the film is them fading to the past, watching young Cap have that last dance with young Peggy Carter as their song plays over the credits. The thing about the end credits is that there's no traditional Marvel post-credit scene teasing what's coming next, but they actually do that with a lot of the scenes during the regular movie, like the underwater tremor that Okoye talks about teasing Namor in the Asgardians of the Galaxy Thor scene. Those are all versions of what you would see during a mid-credit scene, like, oh, wink wink, here's some big stuff that's coming up down the road. There is a very audible sound of a hammer clanking on metal 3 times. It's the sound of Iron Man forging the Iron Man Mark I armor in the cave during the first Iron Man movie. The reason they do this at the end of the credits is for a couple different reasons. 1, to be an homage to the end of Phase 3, like the 3 clanks. 2, to pay honor to the original Iron Man movie in the moment that started all this MCU stuff in real life. And 3, to wink at the idea that someone in the future is going to forge new Iron Man armor. So Tony and Pepper's daughter, Morgan Stark, is no proven genius, but she's going to inherit Stark Industries someday and his legacy. So assume she's about 4 or 5 years old at the end of the film, give her 10, 12 years to become a teenager, and eventually maybe you see her join a version of a young Avengers team and become a new version of Iron Man or Ironheart or however you want to think about it. They're pretty much telling you that no one is going to pick up the Iron Man mantle for a long time. But because it's 2023 in present day, I don't expect them to do another Avengers movie till 2023 or later, which means a solid 4 years till the next one. But we'll probably hear more about that this summer after Spider-Man Far From Home comes out, when they release their official Marvel Phase 4 movie schedule. So I realize there's probably still a billion other questions about big plot twists during the movie or logic that you guys have, so I'll try to do more videos talking about the timeline and Marvel Phase 4 in the next week, but leave all your questions in the comments below. My Easter egg video for Endgame will probably post on Saturday at some point. Congratulations to the giveaway winner from my last Marvel video, Thusan Mohan. Please